Welcome to Closing the Racial Wealth Gap through Community Investment. My name is Erica Hill. I'll be your moderator for today. I am the principal and owner of Vision Street Research here on Long Island, and excited to talk with you. So without further ado, I'm going to get started and introduce our panel. I'm going to start with Rita Sherman. Rita is the Vice President and Market Manager, Northeast Community Engagement for JPMorgan Chase. Excuse me. She is part of JPMorgan Chase Corporate Responsibility Department. In this role, she partners with the lines of business and global philanthropy to set and drive strategy for the region, focusing on engaging stakeholders across community and business to advance a more inclusive economy for all. Prior to joining JPMorgan Chase, Rita served as a Director of Community Investments at John Hancock. In this role, Rita led John Hancock's Community Investment and External Relations Program, where she managed the company's grants portfolio and external engagement work. Welcome, Rita. Thank you for your patience and for being here. There we go. Hi, Jeanique. Riche-Druses is the Vice President and Program Officer in Global Philanthropy at JPMorgan Chase & Company, a global leader in corporate philanthropy with more than $350 million invested in communities annually. Prior to joining JPMorgan Chase, Jeanique was the Assistant Director of Resident Business Development in the Office of Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability at New York City Housing Authority. There, she designed and launched the Business Development Unit, providing access to business building services to over 600,000 persons, launching over 200 businesses. In addition to overseeing the unit, Jeanique collaborated with other city agencies and nonprofit organizations to develop business programming tailored to specific needs of low and moderate income entrepreneurs. Jeanique is also the co-chair of the Long Island Racial Equity Donor Fund, which I'm sure we'll hear more about today. Our final panelist is Nicole King. Nicole King serves the Harlem community as a community manager for Chase Bank's first of its kind community style branch. Known affectionately as Harlem Banker, Nicole has been a fixture in the Harlem community for decades as an influencer, mentor, and financial literacy advocate. Her role at the Harlem branch is pioneering programs to support financial health, hosting education and enrichment workshops focused on unique community needs and supporting growth for entrepreneurs. So Jeanique, talk to me about, I know when we were having some pre-discussion about JPMorgan Chase and community investment, we talked about different strategies as it relates to the making investments in the community. So can you talk about that approach? I know it's not necessarily led with CRA, but a lot of times some of those activities end up being CRA eligible. So can you just talk about the approach and some of those things that you all have participated in?
Sure, I'll do that. But I will answer that question also trying to provide some insight into how three of our teams work together.
Okay.
So, my colleague Nicole actually leads our flagship community branch in Harlem, the Harlem Community Branch, and the whole purpose of that branch is to really be integrated into the community and to act as a hub, not only for our customers, but for all members of the community. So everyone is invited. We've had a number of community events in the branch since opening about 2 years ago. And so nonprofits are able to use that space as they need it without any fee whatsoever, without any charge, to provide their services, not our services, their services to the community. And so the question was, how does what I do support our strategy in community, even though it's not necessarily led by CRA?
Okay.
And so through the JPMorgan Chase Foundation, our focus is specifically on inclusive economic growth. And we have a model to actually achieve that we kind of piloted in Detroit. Detroit was kind of like our learning lab. And so we only focus on 4 key pillars. Those pillars are jobs and skills,
okay,
financial health, neighborhood development, which is anchored mainly in affordable housing,
okay,
and small business development. So we believe that those 4 pillars, when they work together, really help to drive inclusive economic growth in any community. And we've seen it work in Detroit, and we've also started to see it work in other places around the country. And so my work is pretty much centered around that. Specifically, when it comes to New York, we are focused on closing the racial wealth gap. And just to give that some context, this isn't something, Erica, as you know, that we decided to do as a result of all of the horrific things that happened in 2020.
Exactly.
This is the reason why I actually came to the firm. And I came to JPMorgan Chase back in, I think, 2016. It seems like such a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I came because they were doing some amazing things. Our own Vera Moore, who I think may be listening and is a colleague of yours when it comes to the Urban League. She used to be a member of this very organization. She was instrumental in launching something called an African American Loan Fund. Mm-hmm. And that, for me at that time, it blew my mind. I was like, a bank is launching a what? Again. So I applied just to find out more. I was like, what is going on? And then they launched an Entrepreneurs of Color Fund in Detroit. And I was like, y'all starting to call things out. This is crazy. And I interviewed just to see if it was real. And it was real. And you know, at the time I was working at NHO, working with low and moderate income individuals to grow and start businesses and went there to kind of build out their unit to do that. And they were like, yeah, we want you to do that here. And I was just like, come what now? What are we talking about here? It's America's largest financial institution. And it really all came to a head the first month I was in the office. I had to go meet with one of our grantees who was an accelerator in the city that shall not be named. But in the work that they were doing, they told me that they were unable to find any person of color at all in New York City to participate in their program. Which to me was, really? In New York City, you can't find one?
Right.
And they were asking us for $1 million grant, at which point in time I said politely, no, that's not going to happen because our focus is on inclusive economic growth. And they threatened to call Jeanique. And I said, you should, because he's going to say the same thing. And proceeded to leave. And then I thought I was going to lose my job and spoke to the head of our foundation, who said, no, that is exactly what we want you to do. So we are leveraging our power to drive inclusive economic growth and to provide access to opportunity for all people. And so our giving is really driven by that. It's not driven by the flavor of the month. A lot of what we do is based in research. And so based in research, working with the best in class kind of like thought leaders. Our team is primarily made up of thought leaders. None of us really are philanthropists. We all come from nonprofit, government. We have all had experience on the ground actually doing this work. Mm-hmm. So working with ourselves and then also working with other colleagues in the field, helping to, fund their research and then leveraging that research to really build pilots and helping those pilots to grow and scale in a way that they really touch down and drive impact in the community. We measure everything.
Gotcha.
Measure everything so that to ensure that it has its intended impact. If we say that we're going to help businesses be more profitable, at the end of that, we want to see it or we want to know why it didn't work so that we can make changes. So that's a very long-winded answer. I'm going to pause there to see if my colleagues can get in and make sure that our sound is working, but hopefully that spoke to your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I'm going to come back to something, but I'm going to let Rita jump in.
But quickly, you did reference CRA, and while large banks are evaluated by the CRA exam every 3 to 5 years, similar to how Jeanique's approach to foundation giving, we're not driven by the accountability that we have to the OCC and that act. We firmly believe in it. We have stakeholders across the business that really drive our metrics in terms of lending, reinvestments, supporting through financial services. But there's a component of the exam that is called services. And that is really where my team drives the strategy and innovation of that part. And services really encompasses everything that is defined by community development. So really empowering local communities to use knowledge and information to be self-sufficient, to enact change, to catalyze kind of their path around financial health and well. And so we really leverage the act as a way to be collaborative, super responsive, and even innovative in how we craft these programs. So it runs the gamut from making sure that content that we deliver on financial wellness and literacy is culturally appropriate, even in native languages. We also address and think about the intersectionalities that exist. So we work with our partners, for example, and we just did a whole series last year on the spiritual well-being of Black women and financial health. And we developed a whole series on that. You know, we've done things with housing staff and overlaid the impact of student loans. So we really, and that was based on the feedback from the nonprofit saying locally in our communities, this is an issue that really is affecting our community. And we wanted help to really address in a way that's resonant and also meaningful. So we really, and those are just some examples, but really it's about collaborating and really looking at ways that we can do more than just what we're supposed to be doing under CRA. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about how much money is going to the community, it's how are we empowering and preparing the community to really leverage that investment for their well-being and that of the community.
That's amazing. And yeah, you touched on so many great things. I mean, the ability to kind of take information from the community to kind of lead or inform other decisions about initiatives and things going on. And I heard some of that in what Jeanique was saying as well, in terms of research. And obviously I run a firm called Vision Street Research. So I love the idea that you're using research as a way to make decisions. So Nicole, I think we have some sound.
Can you
hear
me?
Oh, we don't.
It shows you're off mute. Maybe it's your volume.
Yeah. So Nicole, I'm going to let you put it in the chat. I would love for you to share with us from a branch level how this really works, because most people's interaction with a bank ends up being their local bank, right? They come into Harlem. Maybe they're opening up their first account, or maybe they're looking to start a business, or buy a home. Tell us about, I guess, both how the CRA is operationalized in the branch and just kind of the activities that you're doing. So you could drop it in the chat, and then I'll definitely elevate what you share in the chat. And everybody that's in here, please, pay attention to what's being shared in the chat. We're going to keep the conversation going because I know we're set to end at 1. This is being recorded, and we'll definitely share additional resources around maybe some of the things that we weren't able to get to. So Evelyn said, try speaking again. Nicole?
Here, type.
Yeah, we hear different. Nicole? Nicole?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, we were able to hear you.
We were able to. What happened?
Oh man.
For a bit of context around CRA, the Harlem branch is actually one of the ways that we were innovative in delivering the services to a community. So like Jeanique spoke about, really it's about internally lifting up what would be impactful in a community. And the branch and our branch network and our services and branch is a big part of the exam. And so really the Harlem model that Nicole's going to speak to is a way that we were innovative in terms of CRA. So it challenged us to do something completely different. And the result was the Harlem branch and of the model.
And just to add to that, can we hear you, Nicole? I don't want to speak for you.
You're on mute.
You're back on mute.
Oh, Lord.
It's like she comes in off of mute, but then...
Can you speak for a second, Nicole? Can we hear you? So just to add to what Rita was saying about the Harlem branch, that was actually something that we developed with the community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before we actually said, we're going to create this new branch model, we actually reached out to stakeholders in the community. So we were having community meetings with maybe 13 to 14 of our grantee partners and just stakeholders in the community to ask them about this vision that we had. Okay. And they course corrected us quite a bit, as you can imagine. And they're the ones who told us how we could serve them. They're the ones who told us what we could use the space for. Because we asked them, like, this is what we have. This is what we're thinking, but how is this going to be beneficial to you? How can you imagine yourself in this space? And so everything that we're doing is really community driven, community led, and they've made great use of the space. One of the things that they said is that, in the locations that they are, not necessarily on 125th Street, removed from the public, people don't know that they're there. And so by having access to this prime location, they're bringing their services smack dab into the community in a way that didn't exist before. And Nicole and her and all of her fabulousness during the height of the pandemic, you know, really looked for new ways to kind of serve the community. So alongside our tech team in Ohio, brought our stakeholders together again. What does this community need? Our branch remained open, which they were very thankful for. We did not shut down.
Okay.
It was a critical resource in the community, but wanted to really be able to leverage it because, of course, we couldn't have, you know, events. And one of the things that we heard over and over and over again is that people in the Harlem community needed access to free Wi-Fi for school, people needing it for work. And so we allowed our branch to be used as a hotspot for people. Wow. They would sign up for, you know, sessions and then come in, do what they have to do, and then leave. It truly is a community center. And it wasn't like we were checking to see if you had a Chase debit card.
Gotcha.
So it was truly for the community. And again, informed and driven by the community.
Yeah, and the model for Nicole's role is now rolled out across the country. So they're hired. She was the prototype. She's a prototype, not only in terms of the role, but how she activated the role and really being from Harlem, understanding the community. To Jeanique's point, continuing an authentic and open dialogue with the community through nonprofits, individuals. You know, we're hiring now 156 Nicoles across the country, so to speak, across different markets. And just last week, they opened the first community branch in Crenshaw in California. And just to speak to the fact that, to Jeanique's point, at the end of the day, it's about kind of lifting up what is happening on the ground. And whether it's through our influence or directly connecting the nonprofit voice to powers that be, having them understand what really is necessary and needed, and really giving employees like Nicole the autonomy and the authority to say, well, this is how it needs to look in this community. And this is the resourcing I need to make it happen, whether it's Wi-Fi around COVID or small business presence in a community. We're listening. And, you know, it might take longer in some markets than others, but we get there eventually. And we get there with the support of community partners, because at the end of the day, it's all about making sure the impact is real and it's felt and it's sustainable. That's right. Too, you know?
That makes complete sense. So obviously we're here at the State of Young Black New York. And I know we'll be closing out this session soon. So I would just love to hear, you know, we spent some time talking about how JPMorgan Chase is making investments in the community, that a lot of your programs and activities are very much community driven. So for a young Black professional, which tends to be obviously the audience that is here in the membership of YP, what are some programs, services, initiatives that you all have that we could take advantage of as people that would like to also make investments back into our community, whether it be like I'm an MWBE, you know, there are folks that may be looking for home ownership or, you know, other ways to kind of build up their financial or generational wealth. What types of things does JPMorgan Chase have available to them?
Me to go first, or you want to go first, Rita?
You can go ahead.
So, why don't you go ahead and talk about the services that we have internally, and then I'll talk about what we're doing externally. Does that make sense?
Internally at JPMorgan Chase, you mean?
Yeah, like our products and services that are, you know, particularly available to young Black individuals in the community. So path forward and everything, let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about what we're doing philanthropically.
Yeah. So Jeanique mentioned path forward is the $30 billion commitment we made to close the racial wealth gap. And obviously beyond the financial system, there are other systems that we're proximate to and impact, which is like housing and home lending and things like that. And so those dollars are business dollars. So that includes not only in terms of developing products for expanding product services for communities of color and low and moderate income communities. So there are some examples of products like a secure checking account that is available to low and moderate income individuals or communities of color. We have also first-time home buyer grants that are also available for communities of color. And one thing I will say in terms of how young individuals of color or anyone that's interested in this work can be involved is really through their local community organizations as well. So Jeanique's going to talk about what we do externally, but I think your voice is filtered up through the nonprofit sector in your local community. So we support and fund and work with a lot of nonprofits that are kind of aggregating that feedback, the needs from a product standpoint, things from like, what identifications are able to be used to open an account, how, looking at the credit score to open certain accounts. That information comes to us, and we do listen and we lift that up and work with the business, to Jeanique's point, to figure out where we can, do some work on our product offerings, or even, of course, we provide in branch to get people to that place where they can be, leverage the products that we have. So aside from literally kind of going in and asking questions of your local branch staff, what are the products available for me, really staying connected to your community as an advocate and as a voice definitely helps us continue to expand our product and services for low and moderate income communities, but also young professionals across the communities we serve.
So just to piggyback off of where Rita ended up, one thing I want to stress is that $30 billion with the B commitment that we made to racial equity is not a quick solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about throwing things out into the community and say, hey, come and get this. It is targeted specifically to Black and Latinx communities. And what we're focused on is true systems change. And so what we're doing right now is all below the iceberg, right? Below the surface, right? It is the bottom of the iceberg. It's how do we turn this big ship called JPMorgan Chase around to be better responsive to these communities. So we're having hard discussions internally. And I would say our team in CR is kind of leading that discussion because, as I mentioned, we are all practitioners that have been on the ground working with like communities that have come in-house. And we came in-house because we have a voice and a seat at the table. And so, like, case in point, when we were really going through the process of creating what became Path Forward, like literally we were having conversations in-house about redlining. I can't tell you how many cartoons I forwarded to bankers in home lending who knew nothing about that. And so having that conversation, ensuring that what we're doing is not just marketing, but that it translates into true community impact is key. And while I asked Rita to speak about what's happening in the business first, because that's the important stuff. In the community is a rounding error, and that's not going to change the game. But if we can change what's happening internally in the largest financial institution in the country, then that is true systems change. That is changing the banking system of America. And that's what's happening. Like, we are having those hard discussions. There is senior level support. It is coming from Jamie. It is coming from Gordon. It is coming from people who are at the very top, and it's also coming from people at the bottom. And so it's just a true mashup that's happening internally. Hard conversations, people are going away with feelings hurt, people are coming back re-energized, and we're working. And that's not stuff that you see externally, but eventually it will show up externally. And, at the same time, we are doing things in the community. If you are an MWBE, there are tons of nonprofits that we support. We are also leveraging our platform to galvanize the funder community, to get more fundings targeted towards MWBEs, targeted to small business development in that space, because there are a lot of funders that aren't in there because they just don't understand what's needed, or they're throwing money at CDFIs. Our goal is to make sure that those CDFIs stay healthy and that they're around for the next crisis. They have covenants that they have to manage, and if all we're doing is throwing loan capital at them, they can't manage that. So again, we're just trying to be thought leaders. We're trying to make sure that the systems stay healthy. We're trying to change the systems. And we're really trying to make sure that this works for those people who have been left out of economic opportunity for way too long. So targeted towards Black and Latinx communities.
Yeah, and we're not going to get it right all the time, but to Jeanique's point, that's why the continual conversation with folks on the ground is so important, because as we're trying things out and turning this ship, we need the feedback. Are we doing enough? Are we getting it right? And that feedback from either nonprofits or our customers that speak to Nicole, we bring that quickly back up to the business directly and say, hey, we're on a good path, but we need to go a little further. We need to kind of increase our ambition a little bit and kind of really try things differently. So I think that's why the consistent conversation is so important as we take on this journey in earnest as a bank through the business, as Jeanique just mentioned.
That all sounds amazing. It makes me excited to know that that your bank is really taking the lead in this effort and doing so much to help the Black community, but also people of color in this space to create greater access and really make investments. Again, kind of going beyond whatever the CRA requirements are, but making true, meaningful, longstanding investments and engaging really with the community. The fact that the activities are being community led and community driven is great. And what I'm going to ask, I think Rita kind of touched on it, but Jeanique, if you have any kind of closing remarks in terms of how a young person, and maybe you guys can call out some other organizations where young Black professionals can be more involved, can be engaged in advocating. I know last year this year I was able actually to submit comments regarding some of the rules that were being proposed for the CRA as an MWBE, because some of the things that were being proposed were going to be unfavorable to the communities that I'm concerned about. And I would, quite frankly, say the ones that you all are serving. But what are some other things that we can do as individuals to continue to elevate and support the work that you all are trying to accomplish here?
I'll start off, and then Rita, if you can finish it up. I would say one thing that we need to do is, number one, continue to develop yourself.
Okay.
Right? Because if you don't put the mask on yourself, you can't turn around and put it back on your community. So continue to develop. Continue to hold us accountable. Because accountability is key, and not just us. Continue to hold every organization that made an announcement last year in the wake of George Floyd about what they were doing around this work. Continue to hold us accountable. Like, now is not the time to pull back. And this is Jeanique speaking. This is not JPMorgan Chase speaking. But seriously, accountability is key, and we are listening, and that's what got us to this place. And while I think all of us have people in our families that are in low and moderate income communities, what is happening to Black and Latinx people isn't about an income level, right? Systemic racism is across the gamut. And so we have to be very creative about our solutions and not equate solutions that impact the Black and Latinx community with poverty. Like, those aren't necessarily the same thing. They may overlap, but they aren't the same thing. And so I would say stretch beyond yourself, continue to learn, continue to grow. We don't have access to, as business owners, to VC capital at the same rates as other, business owners. But why? Like, go into venture capital, like become an investor. Understand what an accredited investor does. There are so many of us that qualify as accredited investors, but because of fear, because of lack of knowledge, we don't go into that space. Learn from that. There's an organization called the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership that we are supporting philanthropically, and they are teaching us how to become angel investors.
Wow.
If you think about it, when Golden Seeds, which is another angel network that focuses on women, when they taught women how to become angel investors, then VC capital started to flow towards women. It increased, I want to say, over like 15%. And so where we can, don't hold back, always push, always learn. Don't think that things are outside of your reach. Continue to reach for it and learn and figure out, because it's not. It just may be that you haven't been exposed to it yet. So I would just really say that our path to moving forward is really improving ourselves and holding others accountable.
And that was amazing. The only thing I would add is also support your local nonprofit community, because a lot of them, are on the front lines. And honestly, a lot of the most innovative solutions are at their fingertips. They know how to solve some of these problems. They're the tip of the spear. They go there before we're able to do so. And so by supporting them, whether it's through volunteering, financial support, or like this, the Urban League is one of our partners, attending events where they're speaking their truth and their narrative with data and information. I think supporting and continuing to make sure that the nonprofit sector is healthy and robust and informed is such a key part of everything that we're doing. So that's the only thing I would add to the comments Jeanique just made.
See, I'm putting the exclamation point on that, Rita. Don't forget where you came from. But can we read what Nicole wrote in the chat?
So I'm going to read it real quickly before they close this out.
Perfect.
So here at the branch, we lead with financial health education first. We have regular programming to help the community learn the fundamentals of financial health. Some resources are available at chase.com/financial goals. And you Invest, which is an online investing platform. The platform gives clients new to investing education and zero to low cost investment options. So thank you.
Go visit Nicole at the branch. You'll love it.
Yeah, now I'm coming to Harlem. I'm coming to Harlem. I'm now, because I couldn't get to talk to her here. Now I have to come to Harlem. Like that. Now that's a requirement because
she's the mayor of Harlem. She walked down and everybody's like, "Hey, Nicole!" Like she's integrated into the community. We're like, "Who don't you know?" You know.
Right? So thank you, ladies, for your patience, and I hope you got some really amazing information. This is being recorded. And we'll definitely be sending a follow-up, which will have some additional resources based on what was mentioned today. And also you can go to the expo and there is a Chase booth. So some of the things that they mentioned today, you can see firsthand at that booth. Thank you, everybody. Head back over to the main stage. We'll have a brief intermission with some nice little musical break with Mr. Matrix before we get started with the next set of workshops. So thank you again, ladies. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. And I look forward to seeing all of you very soon in person.
Erica, one last thing. Don't forget to check out Advancing Black Pathways. So just Google it, an initiative that we launched back in 2019 about, again, economic advancement for the Black community, not leaving out other communities, but we wanted to start with the community that has had the highest hurdles thus far, but looking to add on like advancing Latinx pathways and, other kind of pathways in the future. But for young Black professionals that are like the ones on this call, check out Advancing Black Pathways. And get involved.
We have the PDF for that because Karan sent it to us. So we'll be able to share that as well as a follow-up. And Shalima dropped it in the chat for folks who want to click on it now. So thank you for that reminder. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I'll talk to you all soon.
Bye, everyone.